Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the show. You know, my 1977 Boston Whaler 21 Outrage restoration project I got going on. And if you saw the last episode, we went ahead and took all the teak off the boat and washed it. And this particular episode, we're going to go ahead and put some coatings on it. And I'm going to use a product that not a lot of people know about, but it's super easy to use and it's durable and it's easy to maintain as the years go on, which is really interesting about it. So go ahead and stay tuned for that. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and share it with all your friends, all right? Well, let's get to this. Enjoy the show. All right, folks, we've got all the teak cleaned. It's ready to go. We're going to go ahead and start putting a finish on it. And we're going to put a finish. It's going to be several coats. It's not like a varnish. It's not Sickens. It's not like an oil. It's kind of in between an oil and a varnish. And let me show you what this product is, how easy it is to use. Okay, folks, this product here is called Deks Olje. Deksolje. Deks Olje. This is a matte finish. It's the D1, they call it. It's the first step when you start to do teak. Now, what we did, this teak hadn't been conditioned in many years. So what we did was you saw the product we used, the Snappy New Teak. You put on the cleaner, let it sit for a minute, scrub it a bit, put on the bleach. And it's not bleach, it's more than bleach, but it totally turns it to this color here. It was kind of this color. This will never be seen. This is inside the console, but that's kind of what it was like, even worse. So we cleaned it all up. It's all dry, it's ready to go, and we're going to go ahead and we are going to use this Deks Olje. Now here's the beauty of this stuff. All right, number one, we're going to put this on with a brush, a roller. You can use foam, you can use all kind of stuff, and all we're going to do is brush it on to this teak, both sides. Let it sit. Boom. We're going to let it sit for 15 minutes. We're going to put on a second coat. 15 minutes later, a third coat. 15 minutes later, a fourth coat, and we're going to keep doing this every 15 minutes. Because what's going to happen is, here, let's just show you. We're going to go ahead and coat this. Just like an oil. This is not like a varnish. This is not like Sickens. It's much like an oil where you just spread it on. You see that? Wear gloves. You don't want this on your skin, but this teak is very porous, okay? And we're just going to spread this stuff on and cover the whole thing. I'm even going to do a couple coats on the back. But just spread some of this Deks Olje on your teak once it's clean, and here we go. Watch this. All right? Nothing fancy. You can see how shiny that is that I put it on there? I'm going to show you what happens. Very fast. Okay, let's go ahead and just smooth out the front. Now, you always want to finish with the front because you don't want any drips. And if you can avoid the drips, all the better. They do clean up with mineral spirits. Anyway, hopefully you can see this. I'm doing a well enough job. But isn't that beautiful? Now, this is going to all absorb into the teak. It's going to become like dry. And you'll see this in about 15 minutes or so. Let's go ahead and set that aside. And I'm going to keep on going and just cover all my teak real fast. Okay, you don't have to be like super neat about it, but you don't want huge drips. But it's fine because we're going to be working on this for about 1 hour. Every 15 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and put a coat of this on. And when I come back in 15 minutes, if it's still wet and tacky on the third, fourth, fifth coat, it's usually the third coat. But I'm going to go ahead, and if it's all shiny like that, we're going to let it sit 30 minutes, wipe off the excess, and be done with it. So you'll see as we go through. So this is coat number 1. We're going to let it sit for 15 minutes. and come back and take a look at these things. All right? So I've got quite a few pieces to do, and this is all I'm going to do right now. Give it a quick coat of the matte #1 finish. And we have a high gloss that we're going to put on later. If you like the matte finish, you can just stick with that. I like to put a little gloss on it. However, it does make it slippery. If you're going to do a swim platform or steps, things like that, you may want to avoid the gloss. Most of this is going on a console and some trim work. I do have a couple covers, well covers, but nobody ever stands on them. Alright, so that's how it's done. Look how fast. I mean, it's not like varnish. You have to be really careful with it. It's like an oil. Just spread it on. It's so simple. Love it. And when I tell you how you fix it up next year, you won't even believe it. And I don't know why more people don't use this product. You ask around, who knows about Deks Olje? Very few people. I've been boating my entire life. And I'm the only person I know who uses this product. And you'll see why. It's heaven. And I don't know if you've ever sanded teak and tried to get your old finish off like Sickens or varnish. Oh my. And I'm dripping on this other piece. You don't want to do that. Alright, so here we go. But all that's happening right now is this wood is just absorbing this like a sponge, okay? And I'm just going to kind of like keep placing this stuff out here. Alright. Okay, we'll check back in a little bit. I'm going to get everything covered. Alright, here we are, folks, a little over 15 minutes. And I don't know if you can see how that's absorbed most of that liquid. It absorbs it like an oil. But once you put 3-4 coats on there, it's going to stop absorbing it. And at that point, we're going to wipe off the excess. Alright? So real quickly, you can see I've covered all this teak here. Alright? Took a little over 15 minutes. I have a few more pieces here, but I'm not going to tackle those right now. I was hoping I could get it all covered in 15 minutes, but it took a little more, about 20. So here we are, back at the beginning. And I don't know if you can see, it's still a little got a sheen on it, but it has absorbed most of that. It was dripping off of there, if you recall. Alright, so what I'm going to do is hit this all again. When I get down to the end, I'm going to come over and do a third coat. At some point, it's going to stop absorbing, and it's just going to be super shiny, like my glove. It's going to be where, okay, I've absorbed enough, I can't do any more. And then we're going to wipe off the excess and let it dry. Here's the only bummer about this product, 3 days. So I'm not going to go exactly 3 days per hour, but in any case, today is Monday, so this will be done Wednesday, give or take. Then I can start putting the gloss on it. That is the only drawback with the product. It does take a few days to totally cure once we have 3, 4, 5 coats of this flat finish on it. All right, now see how it's bubbled there? Those are drips. They're going to come off on this next one. If you let them dry, they're permanent. You have to sand them or clean them off with the cleaner. But we're going to take care of those right now. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and get a second coat on these. Took my gloves off so I can't touch this, but this is our second coat. And you can see it's soaking in. It's still a little damp. All right. And I'm all the way down here. It takes about 20 minutes for me to do this, 15 on that last coat. So here we are, 15 minutes in. Here's what the first pieces are looking like. Still a little glossy. I'm going to give it another few minutes, and I'm going to put on a third coat. And we're just going to keep this process going. All right? And we're going to keep putting it on there till it stops absorbing it. I'm thinking the next coat, maybe, since some of this wood hasn't been coated in a while, it may take 4. I'd be surprised if we went 5. All right, let's get another one on there. Oops, I forgot about that. Well, hey folks, here we are, Boston Whaler. We have a little setback with the teak. You know, things happen. And this occurred to me years ago, and I forgot all about this potential problem with the cleaner I'm using. The snappy new teak. It does soften up the wood a little bit, and when I use step number 1, it just gets all the dirt out of the cracks, the grooves, the grain, because teak is so porous, and it does a fantastic job. But it does soften up the wood a little bit, the surface, and not in a dangerous way. But I'll show you what happened here once I put the first few coats of my sealer on there. I'll show you what happened. All right, here's the back of my seat, the helm, and I don't know if you can see, but the teak is supposed to be like this auburn color here, but see this white stuff? Okay, those, it's like a little bit of a raised bumps. I don't know what to call it. It's almost like felt. It's hard now, but when you put the sealer on there, if you look in the video how red it was, well, after a couple days of drying, all of a sudden we have these blonde spots. which is not acceptable. The solution is I should have let it dry. The solution, I should have let it dry and then sanded it lightly, okay, to get rid of, if you can see that. See if I can give you a close-up. See how it's a little bit of a fuzzy look, a little, you know, it's not completely smooth like a sanded piece. Now this cleaner, the Snappy New Teak, is supposed to be sand free. Now if you're putting sickens on there or varnish, this would not be an issue. If you're using oils, it is going to be an issue. This needs to, see, this is probably the worst case scenario of all my pieces right here. It's totally fuzzy. This is where my tachometer and stuff is. Here's another piece. You can see the dramatic, you know, that's what it's supposed to look like, and blam, there we go. So what I'm going to do, I have 3 coats of Deks Olje on here, number 1, and I am going to sand this down and put, well, probably 2 or 3 or 4 coats back on it. The way this Deks Olje works, like in the last segment, you put it on every 15 minutes until it stops absorbing, and then, you know, for 30 minutes, and you see it's still wet and not soaking in, then you stop, wipe off the excess, let it dry. And anyway, that's where we're at. So I'm going to get my little buzz bomb out here. I'm just going to hit it real quick, bring all this down, make it smooth, start coating again with number 1. See how fast that comes right down, right? All right, so now I'm going to take this, split it in half, sand the edges by hand. So this is not a huge, long process. It should go very quickly. We're just getting off the bumpy, felty, raised grain. That's really what it is. It's some grain that's raised. The tops of the grains have softened and swelled up and raised a little bit. And you know, see this here? So what I want to do is just by hand Now I am going to do the whole piece just to give it uniformity, I guess. I don't think it's going to really matter because the product, this Deks Olje, just absorbs in. It's not like a varnish, it's more like an oil, but it's definitely way better than just oil. And that's probably more than I need to do, but we're going to do a little sample here and just check it out. But yeah, it appears that all that fuzzy stuff is gone. You know, I've got some dust on here. So we will give this one a try. You won't know until tomorrow how it comes out, so I'm just going to make sure that I get all this fuzzy stuff off. Hit the whole piece. Obviously the dark areas are not going to fuzz up on you. They're not going to fade to that blonde color. They should remain dark. So as long as you hit the whiter spots, my advice is just to hit the whole thing Better safe than sorry. I am going to have to take a brush to this. I'm definitely going to have to get rid of all this dust, and a lot of this is probably the sealer. I don't know, but either way, I'm taking off that little bit of a surface of that fuzz, and everything should be beautiful. I should have done this before I put any coating on it. It would have taken an hour or so, but it says no sanding required, so it's been quite a few years since I used this particular product. And after this happened to me, I recalled, oh, I don't know, 30 years ago, this happened to me once. So, there we go. I'm going to clean this up with a brush, and we'll soak it with some Deks Olje in an hour or so. Okay folks, I've got this second piece of wood I sanded. Alright, a couple things you got to keep in mind. If you run into this problem and you have to sand this, like I did, if you bug bomb that little felty stuff off, you are going to get this situation. It is going to build up because this sealer is soft. Just take a brush, clean off the paper, okay? The second thing is, there's quite a bit of dust on here. Alright, so before you're going to need to clean this by taking a brush or something to get rid of the sawdust, okay? Alright, and get it out of all the cracks. And I am not going to wash this. I am just going to clean it with a brush and some rags. Okay? And we'll see how that goes. I will do a test piece. And we'll see how it goes. But when I get the brush on here, it seems to clear out most of the dust out of these grooves. And it's looking pretty good. You know, I am not going to wash it again. Yeah, and I think this is going to work just fine. I mean, it's unfortunate. I should have sanded it when it was clean before I put the sealer on it. But it is what it is. I mean, things happen. It's not a perfect world. It's not the end of the world. It's just a delay. It's delayed me a couple days now. You know, I've been able to get some other stuff done on the boat, but I had to let this dry before I could sand it. So yeah, I think this is going to be fine. And if you see any suspect areas, hit them again. But yeah, this is smooth, and you can literally feel that fuzzy stuff, let alone see it. But once you start sanding it, it's a little harder to see. So just make sure when you clean it off like this, you get all the dust out of here, and then you can check. And I see a little fuzzy areas down in here, and I didn't do the grooves, so I might have to do that. Just hit them real quick. And once again, we're not talking about massive sanding here. It's just to get a little of the edge down on those swelled up areas. The grain that's swelled up. All right, now let's take a look. Yeah, and that's totally gone. All right, cool. That's what we're going to do. I've got about, I don't know, 20 pieces I need to attack, and that's what we'll end up with, nice and clean. I will take some more time to do this. Another thought I had was to spray it off with my compressor, but you better make sure there's no water flying out of your compressor. Alright, I've got all these pieces sanded, and there's quite a bit of dust and sawdust, and I've taken some brushes to this, and I thought maybe I could just coat it, but in these grooves, in these deep grains, it still leaves, you know, some dust. For example, you can see the dust that's still in there, and I fear once I put, you know, it's got to be really clean. And I've tried with brushes really getting down and dirty on it, but it hasn't come clean enough, so I am going to wash everything. And that's what we're doing. So out here, basically, I've got a little wash station set up, and I'm just going to hit it with the hose, and I'm going to scrub it. Try to get as much dust off with the hose. I'm sorry, I'm going to do this one-handed, but anyway, basically get it wet, scrub it with a brush. This is no magic, but that's what we're doing. Something to that effect. We're going to get down and dirty and make sure all this is out of the grooves. You know, you can see this little dry spot here, and this is the one I really took a dry brush to, and it still has dust down in the grain, so I'm going to have to wash it all. Let it dry thoroughly before we put more sealer on it. Alright folks, we've got the teak is done. Okay, use that Deks Olje. Now what I did was, you put this stuff on every 15 minutes until it stops soaking in. And that's the number one. It's a two-part process. And once it's cleaned and bleached, you start putting Deks Olje number one on. You saw that, right? So I went ahead for every 15 minutes, kept putting it on, putting it on, put it on. And you saw that it had that issue where I needed to go back over it and sand it. So I did that. Started the process all over again. I have a little white spot here. I'm not sure what that is. But anyway, I think it came out fabulous. But what I did was a little different. I used number one, and I put 4 or 5 coats on it, and I let it sit. And I had some. Now the number one is actually a matte finish, and I noticed I had some like spots that probably needed a little bit more. So what I ended up doing was putting a couple more coats of number one on it. We got these cottonwoods all over here. And so a couple days later, I put a couple more coats on, and here's how it came out. And it has a sheen to it, which is pretty cool. I think it looks great with just the number one. The number two, if you put that on, it looks just like varnish. It really makes it glossy. I like the sheen on this, and I'm just going to leave it. And this is probably 7 coats of number one. The last 2 coats or so were put on a couple days later. And so you can see you've got a lot of the teak here, and it looks fantastic. It really does. So I'm just going to leave it like that with just the number one. Well folks, that's it. We finally got it finished. Now we got to get this stuff put back on. That's what we're going to do the next episode, is try to get all this teak mounted back on the boat. Let me tell you something. It's a lot easier taking it off than it is putting it on. I'll just tell you that. So stay tuned for some comedy next time. Hey, thanks for watching, and make sure you subscribe to the channel and share it with all your friends. Leave some comments if you have any advice for me. Thanks. Take care.